Have you ever wanted to be the first to know if aliens really exist? Well, with Nebula, you can be! Nebula is the streaming service that's home to It's Probably Not Aliens, as well as our YouTube channels. And the best part? All of our content goes up early on Nebula. So when we break first contact with ET, you'll be the first to find out. That's right, you'll be able to listen to the next episode of this show before anyone else. Plus, we post bonus content that you won't find any other place. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablynotaliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and be the first to know if this time it really is aliens. If you were into it, that story you just told me would be a pretty good way to start this thing, because this is a very Italian episode. Or I can tell you about Mamma Mia's Law. I don't know which one is better, but...
Mamma Mia's Law. I think you told me about that one at one point. I don't remember what it is, but I guess this is an appropriate episode for me because I'm going to be... My band is playing a show soon, and my cousins are in a band, and I guess I've told you Italian things before, things that made you amazed at how Italian I am, but this is the most Italian thing I can say, which is my cousins Tony and Nikki play in a band together whose dad and uncle, Johnny and Vinny, used to own a pizza place.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Isn't there like a Vinny's Pizza literally downtown? It's not that one, right?
No, it's not that one. It's not, that's a different Vinny. There's lots of Vinnies who own pizza places.
My bad. Yeah, so Mamma Mia's Law, which was coined by Mia Mulder, which was that making goofs about ethnic stereotypes is allowed under the condition that it is related to countries that have done colonialism. And Italy counts because of Ethiopia, so it works.
Uh-oh. Okay. Also, all that colonialism that the Romans did too. That's something as well.
True. I would say that there was a discontinuity. Being blown apart into a bunch of city-states for about 1,000 years.
Well, yes, but
provides enough of a buffer. But we're not here to talk about it. Well, we actually are here to talk about Italy. This is the most Italian episode I think we've done, and I'm going to do some terrible pronunciation of your language, of your ancestors' language.
I can't wait.
I don't know. Do you actually know Italian? I don't know if you do.
Io parlo molto poco. I'm learning, working on it.
Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit about what this episode's about. I'm going to send you this on WhatsApp, I think. I'm going to send you a picture.
Okay.
We're doing this season. Sending a picture to people that is related to the topic of the episode, and you know nothing about what this show's about yet. By the way, also the audience doesn't know what the show's about yet, but I'll explain the process here. Then you get to tell the wonderful people on the internet what the heck it is that you are actually looking at, and try to see if you can get to the bottom of it and solve the mystery before it even begins. But before we do that, I should probably mention to the internet, hi, this is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we look at pseudo-history, pseudo-archaeology, like pseudoscience, basically, UFO conspiracies, basically anything that is in the conspiracy space that's in the sci-fi genre. I'm your host, Tristan, and because Scott is so busy taking care of his wee little baby, who is happy and healthy and everybody's having a good time, I just got a text from him a couple days ago saying that his son is absorbed by a show called High Contrast Cards, which is one of those, if you know, newborns can't really see color. And so one of the things you do to entertain them and train them early on is that you get these like flashcards that are just like black and white patterns, and they love it.
Okay. I did not know that.
I remember, and also then you get them gloves that are black and white, like kind of like zebra striped, and so they can figure out that they have hands.
Okay.
But because of our pat leave, I have been tapping friends and former hosts of the show, or former guests, and today I am bringing in none other than YouTuber, musician, and one-time author, Sophie Do you go by your full name in this one or no?
Sure, why not?
All right, Sophie Edwards.
Yay. Thank you, Tristan.
Personal family friend and like, person we hang out with, like lives in the same city and everything like that too. So
Yeah, great hanging out with you and your fam. And the way you said one-time author, that was like
one-time published author. You published you have one book out.
That's true. I do have one book out. Or at least I did.
Yeah, that's a story. Okay, so I'm going to send you this picture, and you can tell me what is this kind of Italian adjacent nonsense.
I can't wait. Is it cheating if I already know what that is?
No, that gives us a starting point.
Okay, that's the what are we looking at? It's a sketch. It's a Renaissance era sketch on paper, I guess, and if you didn't know what you were looking at, you might think you were looking at a sketch of like, it looks like a UFO essentially.
Mhm.
It's like conical in shape with like a pyramid shaped cone, and it's like 3/4 of it are on the top, a quarter of it is like shaped the other direction on the bottom, and it really does look like a UFO, but of course it's not.
Well, we don't know that yet. We have to do a whole episode about that. But
That's true. That's true. Am I spoiling things?
no. Do you know who made this?
I believe it was Leonardo da Vinci.
It was Leonardo da Vinci, because you agreed to this episode because of the topic of it. So a little bit of a, but also it's like very clearly like one of his drawings, because his drawings are like an iconic style in and of themselves. But yeah, Leonardo da Vinci, the person that everyone knows was a genius. And I knew nothing really about him or the context of him before I did this episode. But yeah, so here's what we're going to talk about today. Everyone knows that Da Vinci was a genius. He lived in like he was born in 1452. He died in 1519. A very weird time for Europe and the world. And according to Ancient Aliens, season 2, episode 9, the one that we are covering for this season, his knowledge had to be received through telepathic contact with extraterrestrials. And that he may have been contacted, they definitely hedged it. They said he could have been contacted either in person or perhaps telepathically by the aliens that inspired his inventions that were conspicuously too far ahead of their time. And many of them showed that they were way far ahead of their time, even though they were never built, like this, what is supposed to be a tank, apparently.
That sounds like a perfectly reasonable explanation. I don't even know why we're here, to be honest.
Well, let's give a few caveats to this. I think the one thing that I'm going to talk about today is that I use the word genius, but I'm going to say that geniuses aren't real. There's no such thing as a genius. And the thing that leads to us believing in geniuses is kind of what leads to eugenics. And so how does Leonardo da Vinci lead to eugenics? That is part of what we're going to look at today.
Okay.
Because this show is a mess.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that angle, but all right, let's do it. I'm here for it.
Okay. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off by trying to make the strongest case for Ancient Aliens that I can. Start off with what they got, and then we can kind of pick it apart one by one. So first, Ancient Aliens makes a specific claim about Leonardo da Vinci. The quote is that Da Vinci may have also been contacted by a human-like extraterrestrials who either spoke to him in person or perhaps telepathically, and inspired him to do so many different things. So actual communication has been alleged between the two.
Okay.
This builds into a wider theory that we're going to talk about in this episode and also next week's episode, that Leonardo is part of this pattern they're identifying where important people in the past or important inventors and scientists are associated with like being part of these like what they call human collaborators who were entrusted with advanced scientific knowledge that would allow mankind to leap centuries over normal intellectual evolution. So this is like the aliens are planting inventions in these special people who may or may not be hybrids themselves, but that's another topic for another day, with technology far ahead of their time as a way to sort of boost, basically like exactly what the Prime Directive was designed not to do. And so in that list, they mention Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Werner von Braun, but next week we're going to get into Nikola Tesla as well.
And so they're saying all these people are hybrids?
Well,
or possible hybrids.
Possible hybrids, yeah. That's a whole different line of argument from the same episode because the nonsense is layered. And they called it what they say To quote them, to ancient astronaut theorists, the fact that mankind has gone from horse and buggy to the moon in less than 100 years makes such a notion not only possible, but entirely probable.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah, so like if we can make large leaps during the modern era, why not in the Renaissance? And if those leaps seem impossible through normal human development, maybe they weren't normal human development. Ba-bum.
Maybe.
And the evidence that they have is that in 2005, researchers in Florence announced that they had discovered rooms that they believed to be Leonardo's workshop in Santissima Annunziata, a convent. And Reuters and other reporters went out there and found a suite of rooms, including a studio space, a hidden corner possibly used for anatomical dissections, 500-year-old frescoes of birds that match sketches that were found in Leonardo's notebooks, and evidence that Leonardo occupied these rooms around like 1501, 1502.
And this is the not nonsense bit, right? Like this is
That actually happened, yeah.
okay.
And they brought it up in the episode as like, what was there? What were they hiding? What didn't they tell us that they found in this secret laboratory they discovered?
That's always the question, isn't it?
Yep. So, the sheer range of Leonardo's work includes many interesting sketches that they would claim are too advanced for what he would have known at the time. Inventions like tanks, helicopters, submarines, diving suits, parachutes, and advanced anatomical studies that he wouldn't have been able to know at the time, or even hydraulics. That these were not just like him sketching out ideas, but blueprints for technologies that wouldn't exist for centuries. So how could he conceive of it without external guidance?
Imagination, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that nobody can disagree that Leonardo da Vinci lacked in. So yeah, to kind of summarize their claim, Leonardo had knowledge that was too advanced for his time. He reported visions of gods and angels that could be reinterpreted as alien contact. There's a secret workshop that suggests that there was hidden experimental work. And he fits a pattern of exceptional humans who may be alien guided. And this rapid innovation mirrors modern technological leaps that prove intervention is possible. And so that's not nothing, but if you don't look too closely, you're going to miss the forest for the trees here. And so we need to look, I guess, missing the trees for the forests, because we're going to need to look very closely at what's going on here and break apart all these little bits.
It's always the angels, isn't it? That's always the thing in there. Has anyone made like a drinking game for ancient aliens? Because I feel like that would have to be on there.
Yeah.
Or like a bingo card or something.
We have, for all of human existence, seen things in the sky or in our dreams or in some kind of, altered state of consciousness that we determine to be an other thing. And pre-sci-fi, it would be like angels, demons, monsters, whatever. And now we've replaced it with aliens because that fits the sort of mental worldview we have. But why don't we start with that secret workshop? Because that was like the first thing that I think was like a tangible thing. Because when this episode came out in like 2009, it was still only like a few years old when this discovery had happened. Because this is a relatively modern discovery, and it's not fake. It's not like a hoax or anything like that.
Yeah, that sounds actually interesting.
So in 2005, Leonardo's workshop was found, and there was a claim that, they claimed that it was hidden, possibly alien influence work. But it was the way they framed it, it was like a mysterious laboratory that came to light after centuries of secrecy, which implied that there was stuff that was hidden. But what actually happened is, well, it's this, that in January 2005, some researchers announced that they had identified some rooms in the Santissima Annunziata monastery in Florence as a likely place that was Leonardo's workplace from about 1503. So they found that during his second Florentine period, which I'm not a scholar of. I imagine that's just like a period where he lived. Anyways, the evidence they have for this case is that they did find historical letters from Pietro da Novellara to Isabella d'Este, a document that announced Leonardo taking rooms in lodging run by the Servites near the convent. So what we have here is basically like one of these things that I always find very interesting when studying history, but is very odd, which is like, here are some letters about like landlords, basically, like talking about where they're working, like, oh, this Leonardo da Vinci guy living in this room in Florence here, this place. And I don't know, it's odd when you're talking about people like this.
I wonder how closely the workshop resembles what they showed in that episode of Star Trek Voyager.
Ooh, because that would have predated this, right? By a lot.
I think so. Because Voyager was the 90s, right?
Yeah, Voyager was off the air by 2001, so 4 years later.
Yeah.
Maybe they like discovered it and they're like, oh, it actually looks. Did they get somebody interesting to play Leonardo in that one? Because he came back. He was so good they brought him back for a second episode, didn't they?
Yeah, and it's a rare moment where there's one part where Da Vinci's character says he does something to upset him, and then he says "Kikazzo," which is not a G-rated word in Italian,
Okay.
but they got away with it because it was Italian.
Well, there's fun. Yeah, I feel like he like taught somebody how to like believe in themselves or something. Wasn't it Janeway?
Yeah, it was Janeway.
It's like early on where she was like unsure about what to do. I don't remember.
Something like that.
It's been a long time since I watched that show. So they rediscovered rooms that did contain frescoes that showed birds, and researchers have described this as being impressive resemblance of a lot of Leonardo's studies of bird flight, which I guess like, drawings to show how birds fly and studying how that looks. But contemporary experts consistently use tentative language that the frescoes might be by Leonardo or a pupil. And attribution was probable but not certain because the whole thing was presented as a hypothesis pending a wider scholarly review.
So it might be Leonardo's workshop, but we can't confirm that yet.
Or more likely, it might be one of the many places that Leonardo had as a workshop throughout his life that is part of a documented biography of him moving around and doing stuff. Because there's nothing really inexplicable about him having a workshop. He was one of the Renaissance masters, and they routinely had studios that patrons would provide them or that they would rent in monasteries. Like, this was actually a pretty common occurrence.
Right. So at best, it's a curiosity and kind of neato, but not that exciting.
I imagine if you're an expert on Leonardo da Vinci, that I'm sure there's like some things there if you're a scholar that are interesting. But yeah, like not like there was no, secret tanks or flying machines or anything like that in the lab or in his workshop.
Right. No greater secrets to the universe or anything.
No. The research lead said that what he did there was probably ordinary work with at least 5 or 6 assistants, which I think is an important, and also apparently also a cook. Because they found in his secret lab a kitchen.
You gotta eat.
Yeah, so it was like not like an alien lab, but like this Renaissance workshop where normal people were doing normal Renaissance stuff, like painting, drawing, prepping materials, and probably complaining about food. Now, there are some accounts that there's a small hidden corner described as possibly used for anatomical dissections, which is explicitly presented as speculation because they did not find any human remains or surgical tools or records of dissection in that specific room. All we do know is that Leonardo did conduct dissections, but the securely documented ones are from hospitals and medical schools, like University of Pavia.
There's no evidence that he did any dissections there.
No.
They just said, well, maybe.
It's like an inference, yeah.
They really just say things, don't they?
This is like on the scholar side, so it could be like that they're either trying to make it more, I don't even call it, like more, but like have something interesting, like, yeah, like, oh, he was cutting up dead bodies here as a way to sell it. But it could also just be that there might be some dissections or some like, anatomical drawings that they don't know the origins of, and they just might think that had happened here. I don't know. Again, because you deal with stuff that's like 1,000 years old or 2,000 years old, let alone like what we know from even a few hundred years ago is very, very much like spotty.
Absolutely.
And also the 5 or 6 assistants, I think, is the most important thing to recognize here, because Leonardo da Vinci often gets touted for being this like turbo genius because he was so productive and he thought of all these things. But it's not, you need to understand though that like Renaissance art production did not work with like lonely garrets with individual geniuses, but it was actually a form of organized labor that produced a lot of stuff.
Kind of like modern quote unquote geniuses who come up with a bunch of different things.
Exactly. There was a whole system in like the sort of Italian city-states for these kinds of people. It was called like a workshop system, and they had masters who were like guild members who owned the shop. They negotiated commissions, they designed the works, and they signed the finished pieces even when their assistants did most of the work. They often would have apprentices who were teenagers that were bound to a master for several years, and they would start by just doing menial work like grinding pigments or preparing panels. But by the end, they oftentimes would be intentionally copying the master's drawings and assisting on secondary parts of commissions. And at some point, they would be upgraded to being a journeyman, which would be a train worker who would earn wages and execute substantial amounts of works under the master's name and prepare what's called a masterpiece, which is the thing that would make them become a master themselves.
But it's still just all under the credit of the master. It's still all under his name.
Yeah, it's his workshop. So a typical successful workshop would have like 5 to 15 people, even in places like Florence. So top names could run larger operations with dozens of trainees circulating through it.
So does that then mean that like a bunch of pieces by Leonardo, like that we have today, might not actually have been made by him, but by one of his apprentices?
Kind of. Sometimes that's debated, but like I think the ones that we venerate are the ones that we have like confirmed his participation with or are from earlier times in his career.
Okay.
But day to day, very much Leonardo, like many of these masters, functioned like a small craft business and had a pretty sophisticated pipeline. So like a master would produce like a compositional drawing or large what they called cartoons, which were like these full scale designs on paper that were made to represent the thing they were doing. And those would serve as like a template, and then they would store, patch, and reuse those whenever a patron wanted something similar.
Okay.
Then assistants would take the cartoon and put it onto the panel or the wall by pricking the outside and dusting pigment through it, or chasing with chalked backs and effectively print the design onto the surface. And sometimes they would take like, a head from one cartoon, drapery from another, and kind of combine them and kit bash them into the piece that they were trying to make.
Almost like cartoons do with like older cartoons before they had 3D animation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Neato.
Even today, like, you go on Toon Boom, and that's pretty much what you're doing anyway, too. You're just navigating through a big library of like all of the different heads and faces and mouths you've drawn and putting them together.
Neato.
Yeah. So after they would do that, then junior apprentices would come in and do priming, which in painting is where you paint a flat color on the background.
Mhm.
And then advanced assistants would handle things like flesh tones and drapery on the secondary figures. And the master would come in and focus on the most visible bits, like the faces, the hands, some of the final glazes, especially where the contract explicitly requires the hand of the master. So very often, like a lot of like Leonardo's, or some of like Leonardo, but also other like famous Renaissance painters might have had their assistants do a lot of the grunt work of the creation that would be based on a template that was drawn on paper by the master. And then they would have come in and done the most like detailed parts or the most iconic parts.
Right, because that's the stuff that would be the hardest too, like the hands. And
Mhm.
every artist I've ever talked to who does human art has always said that like hands are the most difficult thing to do. So that makes sense to
And
me.
you can kind of see then like how you can't say that that person didn't make it. Like it wasn't like the other person did it and this other person took credit, but like it was a process, and it's basically just a matter of like how do you quasi industrially produce art at a time where you don't have printing and you have like you need the brand of the artist as part of the thing.
Makes sense.
And then also, one of the things that apprentices would do to practice their skill was actually copy their drawings or earlier paintings as exercises to build up like a library of forms that then you can actually plug into later works. So they would basically copy different versions of the same things that the master had done before, explicitly trying to emulate their style, and then later use that for other things to like copy and sell like replicas basically at lower price points.
Oh boy. That sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it was hard work. But basically it's like clip art.
Yeah, I guess so.
But this is like a very normal way that a Renaissance workshop would function. Like there's very good records of this, and this was really big in Italy at this time that basically produced the sort of artistic Renaissance that this period's known for, where we had, because in like Florence alone, there were like 60 of these workshops operating at Leonardo's time.
All not 60 different workshops run by different people, not
Yeah.
Leonardo didn't have 60 workshops.
No.
Okay.
But like some of the busiest shops might have had dozens of apprentices if they had a major commission.
Okay.
So like all those like really big, impressive, like when you think of like, oh, like how did this person paint like the entire ceiling of this church? And it's like, well, they had help. It wasn't just one person.
It's the great man theory, but in art history.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're taking. That's the whole thing that I'm trying to invert here today. Because one of the things I think that's really cool about it is that it was like, they call it a Renaissance for a reason, that this system produced this like small period where there was like a lot of intellectual flourishing, like because it created this like formal knowledge sharing network. So masters were legally obligated to teach their techniques to apprentices, and apprentices were being trained into a professional community that had, so they were learning all the techniques, recipes, tricks, solutions to problems, and then that would circulate through these workshops, and then they would go off to other places and sell that around. And this is one of the reasons, like this system is what caused the Renaissance to have all of this amazing art. Like it wasn't just individual geniuses, but because they'd actually built like an institutional system that made it really efficient and was multi-generational, accessible to those who could get an apprenticeship.
Mm. So is it that like Leonardo's style is basically a copy of his master, and like it was just kind of like a cascading sort of thing, but Leonardo happened to be the one who was the most famous and most prolific, or
Obviously, like people would innovate. Like Leonardo was still very much like a once in a generation creative. He did a lot of things that other masters would not. Like he's the one, he did all those like detailed studies, and he like was really into studying nature and anatomy, and that resulted in him learning new techniques and developing. But he would have started his career by being an apprentice to another master and then developing on that, and then he taught those techniques to other people later on.
so he's still a smart guy, still important, but nowhere near
Yeah.
the mythology that's built around him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what will, like, as you like kind of point out, or as you kind of see, like as you move away, like time wise, this kind of stuff actually doesn't, like, we flatten it, and so the entire workshop becomes just the master that it's known for and stuff like that.
Mm.
So the next bit we have here is the idea of like his ideas, his inventions, designs to advance for his time. I always think of did you ever see, there was, what was it, Into the Spider-Verse or something like that?
Was that the first one? Because I know there was two of them, and I saw the first one.
Okay, the second one begins with an art museum. I think it's the Guggenheim being attacked by like Leonardo da Vinci esque vulture.
Okay.
It was a cool. I mean, those movies are really cool for their art alone, and it gets attacked. Like it
Mm.
literally looks like a drawn on paper character in a 3D animated thing. It was like a really cool looking scene. But
That's wild.
yeah, and there is like a sort of like, if in some like very niche speculative fiction corners, there's like sort of like Da Vinci punk or whatever, like where this kind of Renaissance stuff, like the anime Escaflowne, where they have like Renaissance era mechs and stuff like that.
Mm.
So some of these are known. Like his sketches, he did sketch like things like tanks, helicopters, parachutes, submarines, machine guns. So how could one person conceive of some of these technologies that were like 400 years before their time? Doesn't that suggest that he knew more, or that he was like he had external inspiration?
That's what people are saying.
That's what people are saying. That's what millions of people around the world believe, apparently. But when you look at his drawings, things get a little bit less impressive. Let's start, for example, for the tank. That was the thing that we showed you at the beginning of the show. The drawing shows that it's an armored car that's powered by a man. So this is like, Flintstone style, and that it would have a internal gear train that would make it mobile and intimidating. But as drawn, the gears run in the opposite directions that would cause the wheels to actually fight each other. So the machine literally does not work as like designed. And engineering historians and reconstruction projects have repeatedly highlighted that this arrangement means that it's either an honest mistake, and this is just like a preliminary sketch, or it's an intentional booby trap. Because one of the weird things about Leonardo da Vinci, and you can kind of see it in the picture I showed you, is that he was really paranoid about people stealing his ideas and his designs. Like, for example, he wrote all of his notes on a like, you'd put it on a table, put a mirror up on his stuff, and write it so that you had to be looking at a mirror to be able to read his notes to prevent them from being stolen.
I've heard that. It's so weird.
Well, yeah, it's like some weird version of DRM, basically. But it was like,
Yeah, it's
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also like it's so weird that like people have talked about this before, but like he's building like these like supposed war machines, but also he's like this vegetarian who like really cared about animals and seemed like a really like empathetic person. So like maybe I don't know, maybe it's possible too that like he was building these just as a like an exercise, but didn't ever intend for them to be used.
Yeah, I mean, there's just doodles. It could just be that he was just
Yeah.
like, I know too many people who would be like avowed pacifists who also would design a tank if they had like the resources and time for interest reasons.
Totally, totally. I don't want to hurt people. Doesn't mean I don't play violent video games sometimes.
Yeah. The other thing too is that like it kind of hurts the idea that he like deliberately he like downloaded these designs either like, telepathically or in person, because this a lot of it shows that this was like iteration in progress. Like it's not a working machine. So it really shows like that either this was something that was in progress or just like an idle thing, which doesn't really fit.
Right, right. I kind of get the sense that like I guess he's left a lot of paintings unfinished, and like he's had a lot of different things that he did. I get the sense that he was just a guy with ADHD and just bounced around to a lot of different projects, and I can certainly relate to that. So
Yeah, just make a few really good paintings, and then when you have like a bunch of all of your half finished projects that are all over the place, then people will be like and add mystery to it. But yeah, it does seem like he just had what every ADHD person, which is this fully invested in all sorts of different random projects, and then they sort of just left them by the side.
Mhm.
Makes sense to me. The parachute. So he's often credited with the first design of a parachute, and he did sketch one in about 1485. And he specified even the materials and the dimensions. And to make it airtight, actually planned on using waxed linen.
Okay.
But the thing is that a detailed watermark and stylistic analysis showed that there's actually an earlier parachute type drawing. So he's not the first person to invent a parachute. There's actually an older one of a 15th century Italian engineering manuscript, which is this just says everything you need to know about how archaeology and history work, which is that this Italian engineering manuscript is currently titled British Library Additional Manuscript 34113 Folio 200V.
Ah, the British Museum, one of the greatest robbers in all of history.
Yeah, somebody once described it as the world's largest open air crime scene, and it's a pretty good answer.
Pretty much, pretty much.
But they think that this might have belonged to somebody named Francisco di Giorgio Martini in a Sienese engineering tradition that went all the way back to the 1470s, predating Leonardo's drawing of a thing by like 15 years.
That doesn't sound like a real name.
It does sound like somebody trying to make up an Italian name, like to make fun of Italians. Francesco di Giorgio Martini.
I think that's exactly what you're doing right now, Tristan.
That is the Mario of names.
Absolutely.
The other thing too is and so like the historians of technology often now today will say that Leonardo's parachute was later and probably influenced by this Sienese creator. And the thing is that even that tradition from like from Siena, is that what that is? Sienese? I don't know, somewhere.
Sienna, yeah, yeah.
And this also says a whole lot about how technology and our idea about who invented things come from. And this is more in my wheelhouse, which is that actually the Sienese tradition draws itself from a 9th century creator named Abbas ibn Firnas in Al-Andalus, who constructed a feathered wooden frame apparatus that was an attempt to make a glider in about 875 CE. Because a lot of Italian Renaissance new creations was taking stuff that the Arabs had already done centuries ago and sort of Europeify it.
That's like the history of like so much European innovation too.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is like that this kills the like idea of like the inspiration or download, because you can see a transition of knowledge from Ibn Fernas to like, Andalusian Al-Andalus's engineering to Italian Renaissance engineers, and then eventually to Leonardo, improving on it every time along the way, because these are just like inventors, looking at each other over time.
So thus far, we've got a busted tank that doesn't work, and an idea that somebody had come up with like 400 years before Leonardo did.
Yeah, exactly.
So there must be something new here.
Well, another fun one is apparently there was a statue. And this kind of also shows a little bit of like, this is like not an example of him making something that is like science fiction-y, but does show like, the reason I put it is because it shows the kind of person that Leonardo was when it came to his art projects that might speak a little bit more to him making things like tanks and stuff like that. So the Duke of Milan in the 1480s commissioned Leonardo to build a massive bronze statue of a horse.
Okay.
And he wanted to make this 26 feet tall and it would require like 70 tons of bronze. It would be the largest metal statue ever attempted at the time.
Jeez.
Yeah, and Leonardo proposed to cast the entire thing in one giant piece instead of using the normal proven method at the time, which would be to create it in sections and then put it together. So artists warned him that this plan would fail because putting that much stuff under heat would cause cracking and the mold would have drainage problems. And so after over a year after getting this commission, he hadn't even begun casting it. And the Duke eventually had to seize his bronze and melt it into cannons for a war later on. But he made a clay model, which did stand for a while, but then French soldiers later used it for target practice.
Fantastic. That's wonderful.
It's so of its period. It's everything. It's like the Forrest Gump of European history in the early modern period. But this isn't like the track record of somebody who received like perfect blueprints. This is the track record of somebody who liked to experiment. Sometimes, though, working like really out well, but sometimes being absolute disasters, and also just working real time with materials and failures. Like it's not a sign that he was like inspired, because he has like a long history of trying experiments that failed, and the misses don't get into the story very often.
Of course, even though they're just as interesting for different reasons.
Another example I got here is that from in somewhere between 1503 and 1505, he was commissioned to paint a battle scene on the wall of Florence's Palazzo Vecchio. And
Okay.
he decided to experiment with a new wall painting technique that used plaster that had been treated with turpentine, resin, and wax. And
Okay.
he painted it, but it had this problem where the paint didn't fully adhere. And so as he was working on it, the paint just began to run down the wall. So he attempted to dry the mural by lighting fires close to it, and then but the problem was it was chemical. It wasn't a dryness thing. So he was trying to solve a chemistry problem by heating it up, and eventually a storm leaked water into the hole and destroyed the entire plaster thing because it was all unstable. So he abandoned the project.
Amazing. Maybe that sort of thing works on the planet Glebulon.
Yeah, they don't have water there.
Yeah, of course.
They don't have chemistry there.
They're silicon-based life forms.
But the thing is, like, if he had had divine or extraterrestrial knowledge, he would have I feel like he wouldn't have had these spectacular failures. But it just shows more that he was just a person who tried stuff a lot. And that's really the only way you ever do actually invent things, is just trying stuff and seeing what works.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is he was part of this system. He had explicit documentable teachers. He had sources. One example would be Andrea del Verrocchio, who entered his Florence workshop around the age of 15 in 1467, and show that Leonardo lived with Verrocchio until 1469, and was still, quote, staying with him in 1476, which implies this is an example of one of his apprentices who was there for roughly 10 years, possibly, of intensive training in drawing, painting, sculpture, perspective, anatomy, mechanics, metalwork, just intense study. Sorry, I got that backwards. That's who Leonardo learned from. So Leonardo spent 10 years. Wow, I researched this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm getting that backwards. But so he has a documentable teacher, which is Andrea del Verrocchio taught him for 10 years in his place, and that is where he learned all these different skills that he had.
Okay.
Another way that he would have learned is, for example, another inspiration of Da Vinci was Mariano Taccola. I don't know.
Taccola.
Yeah, who was an engineer that died before Leonardo was even born, but had manuscripts that were all over the place. And his notebooks contain drawings of machines and devices that prefigure Leonardo's, and Leonardo explicitly references Taccola's drawings in his own notes. So he was copying from these people and learning.
As one does.
And of course, the other example would be Francesco di Giorgio Martini, the Sienese engineer who seemed to have learned
who you definitely didn't make up.
Yeah, who it didn't make up. And Leonardo has a surviving copy that carries his own marginal notes and sketches from that period, showing that he was intentionally studying this person's work.
Oh, that's neato.
And you can even see here Filippo Brunelleschi, who designed cranes and hoists for the Duomo of Florence that Leonardo later sketched in his own notebooks, these kind of cranes and hoists that he was making, which that work had actually influenced Taccola, which creates a direct chain of Brunelleschi to Taccola to Di Giorgio to Leonardo. And so the idea of like the download kind of goes because you can see like the very direct lineages of all of these different ideas and inventions going towards how he got to his, like he is a natural outcropping of the environment that he was in.
Right. And if you take things in isolation, then anything kind of seems like a wild miracle. Like if it was 500 years from now and we were like, wow, look at these humans that invented going to the moon. That's incredible. Yeah, but we invented a lot of things before then too.
Yeah. The part that always throws me off is that like we went to the moon in 1969 with machines that were like, you know, computers that were less powerful than a modern day calculator. And for some reason we can't hack it today. And I think that has more to do with money than technology, but
Money and political will, yeah.
and like a higher, I think we have a higher threshold for safety than we did back then.
But if China said they were going to the moon, I'm sure the US would
They are.
make it their mission to go there.
They are. That's why they're kind of getting.
Oh yeah,
That's why America's getting back into it. And the whole thing is that it's very funny because you can see like every time that NASA has to delay its moon mission, it has to do directly with like them then starting to cancel contracts with SpaceX. And apparently the whole thing is like the Artemis mission, which is the new moon mission that they're going through, keeps getting delayed because SpaceX either doesn't make things on time or the things don't work. Like I think that they had like it got pushed back because they couldn't make a moon rover or they couldn't make a new spacesuit and stuff like that.
Fantastic. And like you want to dunk on Elon, but then like as we just talked about, he's probably not doing anything. It's you know his
Team of like very
um,
genius engineers who are all, or you know, very talented engineers who are all working to make these things happen. But yeah, like, but the Chinese are looking like they have the Shongha mission or something like that. That's to be like a whole. They've already landed. They did the thing where a couple of years ago they landed a probe on the dark side of the moon, and that was like the first time anybody had kind of done that, and they learned a whole bunch of stuff. So
that's cool.
I think they're prepping. I think they're prepping for like a 2032 mission. I don't know. This is going to be.
That'd be awesome.
I'm just gonna like. I want to get this because it's a interesting. It's called the Long March 10 rocket. Yeah, Chang'e. That's it. That's the name of the mission. I'm trying to figure out when they want to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because they've done a few. Oh yeah, Chang'e. They want to go. I think in sometime 2029 to 2030 is when they want to land on the moon.
Cool.
Which is going to be around the same time as the Artemis mission doing the same thing. So there's like going to be a real race. Sorry, that was a bit of a sidetrack, but
I mean, we're talking about space, kind of.
We're talking about
it's 6 degrees separation.
We're talking about engineers and technology and stuff. One of the other things that really caused a lot of like flourishing in this period was that this was not a period where books were cheap and abundant, right? Like the printing press had not been invented yet, so technical knowledge only spread through like hand copied manuscripts, and they would circulate them around. So people would just lend each other books. And there were institutions that did do this, like monasteries and cathedral schools managed things called scriptoria, which were just like teams of people who would copy books word, like, you know, page by page.
Yeah.
And there would also be like chain copying where manuscripts would be an exemplar that would then be used for new copies in other places. So they would like take the original manuscript, take it to a place, write it, like they would copy it out and they would take it to another place, that kind of thing.
That's why
so that they didn't get the telephone problem.
That's how we have like so many ancient manuscripts that we have today. Most of what we have that survives is from like medieval monks who just sat there all day and just wrote the same page over and over again.
Yeah, and I mean that's why we have a lot of stuff that, yeah, I said, a lot of stuff that's been that would have been lost otherwise. Authors and readers would also just circulate manuscripts from person to person. Oftentimes, like you would lend a book to somebody, and if they really liked it, they would then get it copied before they sent it back. So sometimes you would lend people books for like years at a time while they like would do this. And so Francesco de Giorgio's treatise was actually copied and diffused in either a scriptorium by copyists or in his own workshop. And those copies would then circulate across courts and engineering circles. And Leonardo got these ideas from all these inventors because of these like copied things. Even the earlier Islamic scholars. So there was like a method of like how this stuff got spread around, even if there wasn't a printing press to say.
Okay.
And the thing is,
a lot slower and a lot more tedious, but it still works.
Yeah. The other thing too, and this is the hard one to swallow for everybody, but the problem is that Leonardo, the whole idea that he was like, you know, channeling advanced scientific knowledge belies the fact that his notebooks have had, and I had to double check on this, He's had essentially zero impact on the development of science or technology.
Really?
He has more than 5,000 pages of anatomical studies, mechanics, hydrodynamics, optics, even early formulations of friction laws. But during his time when he wrote these, he kept them all private. He
Oh,
did not. He didn't convert this material into anything that was timely or accessible or widely used. He did this. He was, like I said, he was a paranoid person who did not like people copying his ideas. So unlike other traditions at the time, he was very much like, I'm just going to like write this stuff down and not share it with anybody. He was
even
like a wizard or something.
even though he benefited from everyone else's work being out there and being published, he didn't want to do the same with his own.
Yeah. Uh,
What a jerk.
Kinda, yeah. Later scientists would rediscover a lot of the results that he made independently, and by the time his stuff had actually like been discovered, other people had already invented it in other places. So canonical credit would go to people who actually entered the public record, like the Amintons for friction laws, like centuries later. One sorry, one historian of science at the University of Oregon summarized it as like this: Leonardo had essentially no impact on the development of science and technology because he hoarded ideas and avoided peer scrutiny. So he might have just been a small bean who had social anxiety and didn't want people knocking his ideas or
Sounds
something.
like it. Or the RSD, but at the same time, the
Mhm.
he could have done so much more, but
Yeah. So he had a lot of ideas that could have changed things, but he decided not to share them. So that also kind of hurts the idea that the aliens would have talked to him for the specific purpose of, spreading technology around the world. And it shows how much science is a social process. Impact doesn't come from thinking up ideas, it comes from participating and making your results public and allowing it to be scrutinized and replicated and being taken up by what others do. And Leonardo did none of that.
yeah, absolutely. And understanding that like your worth is not attached to whether or not your idea is perfect.
Yeah.
And if other people can build on it, then that's good because it means the idea gets better.
Yeah. I mean, any artist would feel like, well, we live in a weird time where we have to make money off of work, but a lot of artists would feel very blessed about this kind of thing. And there was no copyright back then; he was being paid. He had basically medieval Patreon. So,
That's true. That's true.
but yeah, like it's like a very awesome mess. But yeah, like the aliens did forget to tell him that maybe he should have shared his advanced knowledge. But
That seems like it would have been helpful for a lot of people, in fact.
mhm. But the thing is, like, we see when we actually do look at his work is not somebody who was getting inspirations, but was like trying things, forgetting things, circling back, starting over. And there's something like super like relatable and human about that I really appreciate.
Hmm.
There's one quote from notebooks that perfectly encapsulates how like scientific thinking versus mystical nonsense works, and that is that those who are in love with practice without knowledge are like the sailor who boards a ship without a rudder or compass and never can be certain whither he is going. Practice must always be found on sound theory, and Leonardo explicitly argued against vibes based investigation. He demanded method, evidence, and testable theory.
Which is exactly what they do on Ancient
Hmm.
Aliens.
Yeah. And maybe one of the things that he didn't appreciate as much is that to do his work, he needed materials that other people prepared, techniques that someone else taught him, tools that someone else had made, patrons to give him money to live and stuff that also somebody else probably introduced him to, and assistants that somebody else had trained. So yeah, like
So he wasn't a rugged individualist.
no, not at all. And the other part too that we could talk about is just I guess we kind of already got into this, the idea of like telepathic content. Like I feel like it's hard to be like, yeah, telepathy is not real, bud. We have not found the like, radio transceiver part of the human brain yet. Um
They didn't find the radio transceiver in the workshop that they
no.
discovered either?
And this is the part that I always kind of get like every time people talk about psychic powers and stuff, you never investigate like they'll be like, oh yeah, like telepathy is real. And I'm like, okay, how does it work? Like, is it radio waves? Is it like there has to be some kind of medium that you are then sensitive to that you are getting the communications through, right? Like, how does that work? Because if you can give an answer that's falsifiable or testable, then we can actually get to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. It would be really cool if that were real.
Mhm.
Well, I say that, but then at the same time, like, I don't know. I don't think I want to know what's on most people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like a pretty standard way that everything worked back then, that kind of thing. And also there's a whole thing about like Leonardo himself having strong opinions about people who claimed secret knowledge or shortcuts, because he called alchemy the quote false interpreters of nature, or alchemists, not remembering that nature varies the seed, and that many have made a trade of delusions and false miracles, deceiving the stupid multitude. Honestly,
That's awesome.
yeah, mood.
That's awesome. I love that.
So he thought that like alchemists were like grifters, and those who pretended to have esoteric knowledge were arguing against like things that actually turned out to anything. So he would have had a lot of issues with this exact idea.
I think I'm starting to like him again.
Yeah, he's a complicated guy, like all people. But why would people push a thing like this? Is what I want to get into next. But first, Sophie, have you ever had a product before?
Have I ever had a product before?
Or a service?
I think I've once or twice. Yeah.
Indulged in a product or service once or twice? Well, why don't we try to check out the product or service that supports this show and makes it happen? God, I am losing it. I have done so many of these now. Roll the thing. Oh, to come back to, have you seen the McDonald's thing that's been going on the internet right now?
With the CEO?
Yeah, who's like, I love this product.
And then he's like,
takes like the tiniest ass bite of a burger. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And the best part is like every other fast food CEO is now like being forced to by their comms team to like have to eat their own hamburgers on social media. So you can like I think the Wendy's and like Burger King CEOs all had to like make videos of them showing that they actually eat the food that they make.
Oh man, I wonder how many of them, if any of them, are vegetarians. That would be deeply ironic.
It'd be rough. The only one that I thought I actually bought into, because he was like, he was actually like cribbing on the McDonald's video, was not by any of the big ones, but was by A&W Canada. And how like their CEO is like in all of the commercials and stuff.
I didn't, but okay.
There's like A&W Canada has like a CEO or like a mascot guy who has been in like every commercial for like decades, and he made a video where he was like intentionally like parroting the product thing. But why do you think that Ancient Aliens needs to have Leonardo da Vinci be this kind of like weird genius? That's what we're going to look into right
Why
now.
do I think Ancient Aliens needs Leonardo da Vinci to be a weird genius? Because their nonsense doesn't make sense otherwise?
Kind of. So they're not just bad at research. That's the important thing. They need this whole thing to be true for a very specific reason. Because if you admit that Leonardo da Vinci succeeded because he had good teachers, predecessors, assistants, patrons, a guild, and material infrastructure, then you're admitting that human achievement is collective and it's a material process. And if a human achievement is collective, then the whole narrative about these like people are too advanced for their time starts to collapse, because their entire framework requires a specific type of story, an exceptional individual who transcends human limitation through external intervention, because an alien can't intervene with like an entire society.
Right. That makes sense. And maybe that's just a sad, ironic outcropping of like the whole great man idea, that like it's not just the great man, but the great, I don't want to say above man because that's not what I mean, but like the great,
Great alien.
It's not just yeah, exactly. It can't just be individuals. It has to be this like great entity above us that's inspiring us to do things.
And this kind of fits into like a greater narrative of like this whole show, but also this season specifically, is that there's a lot of like erasure. Like in the episode that we did with Mia on the mud flood, like a lot of work that actually requires a lot of people gets made invisible and sort of reduced down to either the people who funded it or the person who led the project. So in Leonardo's case, Leonardo's 10 years of teaching under Andrea Verrocchio becomes innate genius. That Leonardo invented the parachute, gets replaces the documented lineage of like iterating on this design. These kinds of things just kind of like think like Leonardo had like 6 workshop assistants usually, and they're completely written out of the story.
Of course.
And like, many ideas they got from other people that he probably wouldn't have even like claimed were his ideas just kind of get taken aside. And we see this across fields, like in industrial history, factory workers, lab technicians, and draftspeople disappeared to turn into Edison invented the light bulb. Or
Right.
have you heard of like the women computers?
Uh, Refresh my memory.
Before, like, we had like, computers and calculators that could do like a lot of mathematics, they would have these like departments of like universities and stuff, or like labs that were made up of like women doing kind of secretarial work, but all they were doing was like the math for like the researchers all day. So they were called computers.
Interesting. Okay. So they were just human calculators, essentially.
Yeah. Or the like,
That's awesome.
the other researchers were marginalized and taken away, to reduce to, say, like Watson and Crick discovered the DNA structure, which we know that there was
Right.
at least one woman who got completely written out of the story.
Right.
And the Steve Jobs revolutionized computing erases thousands of engineers and designers and workers, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of part of this whole thing that is part of the History Channel's whole oeuvre. Like, for this season, I actually interviewed a media historian or a media studies professor named Cortland Pippert, and who
Okay.
watched close to 1,500 hours of the History Channel and built a database of
Oh, wow.
every primetime show airing from 1996 to 2020. And she found the idea that the History Channel used to be good kind of erased a whole lot of like important stories from this, because they did this because they're trying to make romance television for men. That was the actual words they used for it.
Okay.
And so part of that is like reproducing this like, individualistic idea of things on top of, and we'll talk about this in further episodes in the season, like white grievance and like victimization culture, but also these individual geniuses become like, they really lean into like great man theory because it like resonates with that certain demo.
Yeah, and I'm sure like sexism and racism and that kind of stuff have like a factor to play as well. I remember seeing the first person we know of who climbed Mount Everest, um, Edmund Hillary, and it's like, yeah, he was the first person. Here he is pictured at the top with his Sherpa, and it's like that Sherpa is a man with a name, Tenzing Norgay. And now the histories say, yes, it was Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, but originally it was just, oh, Edmund Hillary did it with his Sherpa.
Oh yeah, tons of colonialism, like all of like the 19th century Egyptian archaeological discoveries that were done with the help of like dozens, if not hundreds, of Egyptian diggers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all of this traces back to something that you've been pointing out, which is the great man theory of history, which was coined in 1841 by Thomas Carlyle, a person who did so because he very much did not like democracy.
Oh boy.
It's very much like his whole thing is that, one of his quotes from him is that ballot boxes, reform bills, winnowing machines, all these are good or are not so good. Alas, brethren, how can these be other than inadequate failures, melancholy to behold? Find me the true king or able man, as he has divine right
Wow.
over me. Yeah.
Wow. He's just wants a big strong man to tell him what to do. Just wants to be dominated.
Just a sub. Yeah. Just a bit of a brat sub. It's fine.
Which is fine. No, I don't want to kink shame, but like, just don't make it everyone else's
Just
problem.
don't change the entire field of history as a result. But great man theory of history became a mainstream part of Victorian era history, like kind of like as history was developing as a social science. And like it resulted in things like, if you look at like the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, it's like largely structured around biographies of great men and not much social history at all. And so this idea solidified into a lot of our concept of like how the past worked. And then we retroactively then would take people like, Leonardo da Vinci and then try to make them as these like singular forces.
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent, like having history be focused on like biographies of individuals does help to like humanize it a little bit and helps people to like relate to like individuals rather than social movements, but it doesn't do much to like forward the pursuit of knowledge in the field.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't, no. And unfortunately, that's how like a lot of like history was written for a while. And then that idea also spreads to other movements. For example, do you know who Francis Galton is?
I do not.
He was Charles Darwin's cousin, who in 1883
Okay.
coined the term eugenics,
Oh,
which they considered the quote science of improving stock. So,
awesome.
because what happened was is that the great man theory of history then leads you to this idea, well, why are these people great? What makes them great? And Galton would believe that these are hereditary traits that are found in certain families or in certain groups, and explicitly argued that we should, encourage more breeding amongst the fit and discourage those amongst the unfit.
That really is just a logical conclusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
To that line of thinking.
Which, of course, then is explicitly cited in the 1930s by Nazi intellectuals, and the rest of history writes itself. But how do these ideas come to today? Well, today we do the same thing with like Elon Musk's visionary plans, or Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or Sam Altman are all sort of worshipped as these like leaders in technology, who are like these geniuses, when like all of these people are the result of teams of hundreds of people. In fact, in the case of, at least I know in the case of Sam Altman and Elon Musk, that they are business people who don't really know anything about the technology, or that much about the technology that they're actually working on.
Yep.
Like Elon Musk has his name on like one patent, and it is a patent that has like a dozen people's names on it. And it's like part of a car
Yeah.
door for Tesla.
I remember reading that Tesla doesn't patent their stuff. All their patents are public. Um, and I remember reading that like if they did patent their stuff, they would have to put on record who actually invented it and who didn't. And
Oh,
so it would be on
yeah.
record
Oh my God.
that Elon Musk doesn't invent
and
anything.
and same with his SpaceX. Like SpaceX is like made up of a bunch of aerospace engineers who,
Yeah.
to the point where apparently, I heard about this at SpaceX. Elon Musk just wanted the performance of working hard and working late all the time, and so his engineers were just made to work late, fair like all the time, to the point where they all got into World of Warcraft together because they just were like in the evening had nothing to do and just needed to look busy at the office.
Oh man, what a person.
But the whole thing is that, so we are still stuck in like this idea of like mythologizing these people, and all of the engineers and the people who make these things work actually don't get that much attention. Helen Lewis, in the 2025 book The Genius Myth, argued that genius is actually a right-wing concept because it champions the individual over the collective and turns genius into somewhere between a secular saint and a superhero who gets all the credit.
That makes a lot of sense. And it fits in perfectly with the like individualist mindset of like capitalist cultures.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this serves power. If singular great men are responsible for progress, then social inequality is justified. That workers are at the end of the day replaceable, and that redistribution is theft.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why there's like a lot of connection between like Silicon Valley culture embracing things like IQ testing, embryo selection, optimizing the gene pool, and Peter Thielness, and the idea of producing high IQ children, which is all just sort of playing into this idea because they want to imply that this kind of ableist idea that there's something called natural talent and that some brains are just better than others and deserve more resources or rights or
Right,
whatever.
right. And even if some people are like some people are more geared toward like my brain is more geared toward words. I'm not very good with numbers, but like that's still I don't know.
No, go for it. To the part that I do want to like kind of explicitly do this is that because you have a YouTube channel that's called We Have Always Existed. And if there isn't like a story
That's
of
true.
a class of people who have been more erased from history for their contributions and stuff, it's trans and just other non-gender conforming people. Because your entire
That's
channel's
true.
about
That's
that.
true. Yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of fun because like especially in ancient Rome, people will say like, "Oh, this is why Rome fell." I get that in my comments all the time. This is why Rome fell. You're the reason Rome fell. Well, gender nonconforming people are attested in the records of Roman history since like I want to say 215 BCE. It might be 205, but it's somewhere around there. um, which is like 600 years before Rome fell. If Rome indeed ever did fell, that's a whole other can of worms. But it's more accurate to say that like we caused the rise of Rome than the fall of Rome. So it's, yeah, again, nonsense.
There's also like a really deep like whole thing where a lot of gender nonconforming people are part of the development of early Christianity, with a lot of like
Yep.
saints and monks and like like there's a lot of just times where like, well, yeah, again, it's just like a lot of people, a lot of a class of people who just kind of got overwritten, or they'll do something. Even the calculators that I was talking about earlier, where these women's work kind of gets taken away from the credit of like discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's who are these great men figures? It's always men, and it's always like almost always white men. So,
Yeah, exactly.
hmm
But one of the things that we can take away from this is if you look how Leonardo da Vinci actually did make all of the amazing things that he did, it's because they had a really strong system about things that were very counter to the lone genius. That there was like formalized knowledge sharing, a legal obligation to teach your skills, a guild that made things happen so that knowledge wouldn't be hoarded but institutionally spread, and then apprentice, like a whole system of apprentices who then made new apprentices, so like a whole multi-generational transmission of knowledge. And then also the hardest thing that seems like for our world to grasp, economic support for learning, like because if you were an apprentice you got room, board, and your training all covered. You weren't expected to figure it out alone or pay for the privilege of learning from these
right,
people.
right. If you showed, you know, aptitude for it, they
Yeah.
took care of you.
And they had
And I'm sure there's still lots of people who fell through the cracks. Like it's not like this was utopia or
no.
anything, but still.
But what they had done is built a system that worked for like creative and technical development in like there's this whole thing where it's like the thing that causes technological development and scientific development is people who feel economically stable in a situation where they can talk to a lot of other economically stable people who are also trying to learn and develop things. Like that is what makes the universities work, but that, or at least that for a time it did. And that's what, or
Yeah.
optimally is what it will do. But it's also like what made this sort of Renaissance system work. And if we want innovation, we should do more of that. Like there's that whole thing where Google, I don't know if they do this anymore, but Google used to do a thing where they found that they got their most productive and most novel things by just saying, hey, Friday afternoons, you can work on literally anything you want. Like, doesn't matter. And that's where they got a lot of their most creative fixes and everything.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. They called it something. It was like flex time or something like that.
Yeah. And it worked for a lot of like Google's early stuff where like, they're some of the architects of modern 21st century internet. So,
For better and for worse.
yeah. So, end of the day, credit people who help you. When somebody mentions a genius, ask who helped them, who taught them, who worked with them, who funded them, who actually did the execution, and whose name is not on that thing. And, you know, try to thank other people for your own accomplishments. Try not to, what's it? Remember thou art mortal. That's there. I got the Roman connection right there.
There you go. There you go. Memento mori.
Remember that no individual is great and that everybody is the result of a lot of people who did a lot of work over a long period of time to get you to where you are. So let's not rock star ourselves.
Hell yeah.
Especially those who are, who are marginalized in our society who won't get that kind of attention. Oh, so yeah, that's Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Papa da boopy. I'm gonna go to East Side Mario's tonight to celebrate. For any of those who don't know, that's a Canadian chain of extraordinarily bad Italian food. It's basically like, I guess, our version of, imagine if Olive Garden didn't pretend that it was classy.
My toxic trait is I actually kind of don't mind East Side Mario's. It is not good. You are correct. It is not good, but part of me loves it, and I don't know why.
There's the term I think that Lindsay Ellis pointed out, which is that it is what is called my trash.
Yeah, 100%.
But if there are a lot of people, especially people like as we mentioned, gender nonconforming trans people who don't have their stories told, especially in say classical periods. If there was a YouTube channel that somebody could go to say, learn some of those stories? Do you know where they should
That
go?
would be really cool if somebody started a channel like that. That's a great idea. And that's exactly what I said to myself 3 years ago, but when I started my channel. Yeah, you can go to youtube.com and you can search for We Have Always Existed to find all sorts of interesting stories about transgender history, mythology, and literature in the ancient Mediterranean.
Transgender mythology. I gotta know.
Hmm.
I'm guessing there's.
Like Tiresias.
Oh, okay.
You must have heard of Tiresias.
Probably.
He's
The name sounds familiar.
he's the one everybody knows about.
Okay. Well, I got her channel. It's great.
All the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah. Now, for this podcast, if you want to get in touch with this podcast and find out when things are coming out, you can go to Probs Not Aliens on Blue Sky. Scott, who's not here, but has a new baby who also is partially fed on YouTube money. So if you could go and check out Scott's YouTube channel, NerdSync, NERDSYNC, and watch a few of his bangers, I'm sure that he'd be very grateful. Or my own. Step Back on YouTube is one that I've been doing for a decade and change. By the time this episode comes out, I should have 2 videos that I made after my 15-month hiatus. So there's a video right now about how to resist authoritarianism, and I have another one coming out about Hindu nationalism. So getting off to a very positive start. If you want to support the show with monies, there's 2 ways that you can do it. The best way is to join Nebula. If you go to nebula.tv/probablynotaliens and sign up using that link, the show gets credit for that. And if you want to help with our fund to pay our editors, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/probs.aliens. But if you don't have money, which makes sense because few people do these days, podcasts thrive on reviews. So put reviews on your pod app of choice, or tell your friends about the show, or enemies. I'm not picky, but you could do so by sending them to probsnotaliens.com. This is the last one of this batch that I've done that spiel, and I feel like I finally was able to get through it without just feeling like I just did one big breath.
I've only heard this one, but you sounded great.
Excellent.
Good job.
Nailed it. Okay. But until next time, I'm Tristan Johnson. I guess you're not going to be here next time.
I won't be here next time, but I'm Sophie Edwards.
And the truth is out there. Probabilmente. Should have guessed. It's very every time.
I thought that's what it was, but I didn't want to, franglais it.
Yeah, or it's either the French word or the Spanish word. Which one's it going to be? With some Italian flair.